Welcome to Whachacha's Tabletop World, the channel devoted to the love of board gaming. My name is Sweetness Whachacha, and this is a rankings video where I do my top 10 cooperative games of all time. Now, I decided to split my top 10 games of all time into two lists because I play a lot of cooperative games, and that is what you're going to see now. If you'd like to see my competitive list, click on the link on the screen or down below. My number 10 is the newest game on my list, and that's Sky Team. This is an absolutely wonderful thematic game. Very innovative. This is essentially just a two-player game where you're rolling dice. Now, I normally don't really like dice games, but this game is so fast and it has such an interesting thing going on that I find it's okay. Not okay, it's a great game, but I mean like the dice part of it doesn't bother me too much. Now, this is a game, you're essentially just landing into a different airport. I love the idea of finding a game that you like the general gameplay, and then you can play it over a lot of different scenarios, giving you new challenges, giving you new variety in the way that you play the game. I absolutely love that. It keeps it fresh and exciting. It's sort of like an expansion in the box. And I love the theme of this, just in general, flying in. You would think this should be such a ubiquitous theme, but it really isn't. There's games out there like Airlines Europe, which is more of a stock game, like a stocks game, but it's not such a common theme, and it's such a wonderful one. And I love to be inspired by games and learn from games and things. And different airports will make me think like, oh, I remember flying into that place, and I love that. It makes you think of that vacation you took maybe. And then you might find a place where you're like, oh, I'd love to go there. And it's just really, really cool thematically. Now, there's like an airport, like I learned this too, like there's an airport that like only 12 pilots in the whole world are certified to fly into, which is really fascinating. But you're going to be, essentially, each of you are going to take turns. You're going to have a little talk, and then you're going to roll dice, and then each of you is going to place a die without communicating. And you're trying to infer things, or, it's a lot of like, subtle communication, right? And the idea is that there's a bunch of actions you have to do every round to keep the plane moving. And then there's other actions that you definitely have to do before you land, but you can do them kind of at any time. And it's sort of this, you want to make sure the plane is flying properly and communicate with your partner. But it's very simple, but it's fascinating. And each of these different airports will bring with it new modules, like a leaky fuel, or if you're flying into someplace snowy, you'll have ice breaks, or you might have an intern or some other challenges and things. And that's just absolutely fascinating to me. And probably my two favorite modules are the wind, since you have to point your plane, and if you have a headwind, it's pushing your plane. If you have it's headwind versus tailwind, one pushing your plane and the other speeding it up. And the other one is there's like one where you have to angle the plane in certain ways because you have to avoid mountains and things. And of course, it's very thematic depending on which airport you're flying into. So it's really a wonderful, wonderful game. I mean, you're learning about different places, you're remembering places you've been, and you're working together, to clear air traffic out and just to land your plane safely. Very quick to play, super fun, and a lot of variety in the box. That's my number 10 Sky Team. My number 9 is Marvel Champions, the card game. Now, this is a living card game, which essentially means that on a regular basis, new content comes out for it. So like maybe once a month, not that often, but essentially kind of once a month, you'll get a pack, and it's going to give you some new options to play the game. And that's going to consistently go on over the years. Now, you're a superhero, you're in the Marvel universe, and you have a deck, like a 15-card deck, and then you're going to pick one of 4 different aspects, which kind of do different things. Leadership, you're going to get a lot of allies. Aggression, you're going to be fighting. Justice, you're going to be thwarting. And protecting, you're going to be of course protecting. And each of these different mixes, if you take each of these different aspects, you can add it into your deck, and then you're going to have like a Spider-Man Justice deck or a Spider-Man Aggression deck. And these are different ways of playing the game. And essentially, each of the games, you're going to be fighting against one villain, or a group of villains that are kind of working together as one. And that's it. You're just playing. It's fairly quick to play. You can play about an hour, and it's got a really great, like that lifestyle part of the game where you're able to, you say, oh, I'm going to see what Spider-Man's like in Justice, or I'm going to see what he's like in Aggression. And you get to try him in different ways. Or you'll try a different hero in those same different ways. Or you'll say, hey, I'm going to take one of the aspects like Justice, and you'll say, I'm going to use this archetype, or there's different archetypes in there that do kind of different things as the game develops and new cards come out. And that might sound like overwhelming, but you can just play with what's in the box, what comes in the base box, and enjoy it. You can play it against different villains. There's they have these expansion sets, these campaign boxes come out, and they're themed. Like there might be a Spider-Man one, and you fight through the Sinister Six type villains, and you're gonna, you can play a campaign of 5 missions. And each time one of these boxes comes out, it's super fun to say, oh, there's some new heroes in there, and I'm going to take these old heroes or whatever, make a couple of decks, and run through those campaigns. And I found that to be super, super fun. Of course, they're very replayable, and they have some extra elements, or you can break them apart and play them singly. Now, this also features a modular system where you can take these villain, decks and add in all these different modules and change it up. You might play Sandman. You might want to fight Sandman, and you might fight him like in the way that you would fight, that he's explained to be, add these modules in to make it his enemy deck. Or you could say, well, I have an Electro module deck, so I'm going to take the one that they want to put in there, and I'm going to put Electro in because they often work together, and I'll try and see how that's like. And it allows you to really customize the villain part of it as much, well, maybe not as much, but in addition to the way you're constructing your hero decks. And I find that to be super fun. And one of the most exciting parts about it is that, and this is why I think the living card games from Fantasy Flight, these sister games, work so well, is that there's 2 economies. There's always 2 things you're doing. You're not just fighting. In this game, you're fighting, of course. You're going to try to eliminate the villain, but the villain's also scheming, and his minions and things are all trying to do something, right? They're trying to break into a bank if you're Rhino, or they're trying to, whatever the villain is trying to do, and you have to thwart that. And there's damage, and then there's threat that's getting placed on, and if enough threat gets placed on to the to what the villain's trying to do, then they'll win the game. Or if they eliminate you from fighting, they'll win the game. And so you have to choose between when's, I really want to kill this minion, but this this person, but if I don't do that, then the scheme's going to go off. So what do? You have to, it's a push-pull, and sometimes you have to. The most revolutionary part of the game is that your hero card is 2-sided. You're a hero, and if you flip over, you're in your alter ego. So you're like Spider-Man or you're Peter Parker. And when you're an alter ego, you don't get attacked anymore, but the villain will just go ahead and scheme on its turn instead. But you need to do that in order to recover lost hit points and things, and to keep the villain from attacking you or they will kill you. And so it's a real push-pull in every aspect of this game. And every expansion that comes out really makes the game so much more interesting, but it's so approachable. You can just buy a hero. You can just say, hey, I'm going to play Cyclops. Buy his pack off the rack, open it up, you're ready to play. So it's super approachable, but at the same time has a ton of customizing if you want to get into that aspect of it. And of course, people they do what's called net decking, and they put decks up all the time, and you can kind of just go online and say, oh, that sounds like a neat deck, grab the cards, put it together, and try it for yourself. And so I find that to be really, really fascinating. And the newest expansion that came out for it really got me excited, and it's really rejuvenated my love and increased my love for this game. And so that's Marvel Champions, the card game, my number 9. My number 8 is Orleans Invasion. Now, the game of Orleans is a very fantastic competitive game, and it features an expansion that turns it into a cooperative game. Now, there are very, very few cooperative Euro-style games, which this absolutely is, and very few, very rare to see this kind of thing where they take an existing game and can successfully make a cooperative game. There are some other games out there that they're like, we're co-op or we're competitive, and I'm like, I don't think you really made you did either very well. But this game, it's so simple the way they do it. There's a component of the game where you can kind of send your workers to get them out of your bag, and I'll explain that in a minute, onto an achievement board. And they basically took the achievement board away and put in kind of a cooperative board where you have goals that you're both going for, you and however many people you're playing. But essentially, it's a bag building game instead of a deck building game. And it's also worker placement. And what you're doing is you're kind of acquiring these workers and putting them in your bag, and then when you reach in at the beginning of your turn, you're going to take out some workers. And those workers can be placed on your board to do various things like move around, acquire goods. You can buy buildings and buy additional workers or gain these things, and that's going to change your strategy. But what I really love about this as a cooperative way is it makes complete sense. So you're doing the same things you do in the competitive game, like you're trying to enrich yourself in the competitive game by making lots of goods, or building up different areas on the board, storehouses and things, or trading posts and things. And in this version, you're doing the same things because you're going to get invaded. This is a medieval type game with very wonderful art, evocative of a stained glass. And you still need to produce goods because you're going to need to eat. So you're making all this food, but it's so that you can eat, and you're getting all these soldiers like you normally would, but you're lining the walls. You're in the game, you're building these technologies, but in this way you're building technologies that are like catapults and weapons of war and things. So it makes complete sense. It seamlessly integrates into this game, which is fantastic. Now, as a cooperative play, it has something that I do like to do in Flashpoint Fire Rescue, which is like so this game it's not like multiplayer solitaire, but it's a little bit. So at the beginning of the game, you kind of sit with your partner and say, I'll take these 3 buildings over the course of the game. You take those. I'll work on this kind of a goal. And you kind of like make a strategy in the beginning of the game. Each of you is going to have your own special goals that you have to get in addition to the normal goals. And this is like kind of great because then you discuss how you're going to do these things, and then you play for a while. You take your turns. Okay, I'm done. Okay, you're good. And then occasionally you check in. Okay, we're doing pretty good on this. This is, and so you kind of like keep little pop-ins, but you also kind of play in your own little game. The same way you would in Orleans, but this time you're working together, which is fascinating. And as to the difficulty, this is almost the perfect difficulty in any kind of cooperative game, because I feel like they must have played so many of these and figured out, we're going to give you one less turn than you need, because I don't know, I played like 30 of these. I don't know, made a dozen solos, some with my friend Jesse, some with my wife, and I would say like 70 or 80% of the time, one more turn I would win, but I didn't win. But you're so close, and that just makes you want to play again. So this is a really rare bird, like I say, because it's a Euro game and it's a cooperative, and it's really, really fantastic. That's Orleans Invasion, my number 8. My number 7 is Forbidden Desert. Now this is part of the Forbidden series, which is Matt Leacock's quadrology. It's a kind of a thematically linked series of cooperative games that they're kind of like the Harry Potter books in a way. I don't read Harry Potter, but I know that they start off quite simply, maybe. So if you're younger, you can enjoy them, and as they go up and you age, they get more and more adult and more serious. And I feel like this series of games follows a similar trajectory, where they're getting a little more advanced each time. But this one is the perfect one for me because you could play it in like 45 minutes to an hour, which means you can play a bunch, and it's very, very fun. But it also has enough meat on the bone to be absolutely fascinating. Now, in this game, you are wandering around this desert, and sands are moving and things, and it's burying stuff, and you're trying to find these components to this ship that you can put all together and get and fly away, essentially. But it has that same thing that I love in other games of his, which is that you have different player powers, and that depending on what player power you have and your teammates have, it completely changes the game. Like, you're like, oh, okay, that's cool. Hey, let's play a game and let's try these other characters, and then it's just completely different in the different way you combo them. But it's so very, very enjoyable. It's a very simple game. You're clearing out sand, you're moving around, you're flipping tiles over to discover what they are, and then you have some, and you're trying to find where these missing pieces of the ship is. And the last thing is very interesting to me is that it has this really interesting system where the board is kind of moving around all the time because of the storm. And I think that's it's more thematically, meaning like you're in a desert and everything kind of looks like similar, and you oftentimes, because it's a storm, you might wander the wrong way or whatever. I think that's kind of the way I look at it. But because of that, when you uncover a piece, it will, hey, this is where the propeller is. The tile that it will show you where the propeller is will show you which way it's going vertically, and then when you find the horizontal one, you'll place the piece on that tile. And so it kind of has this very cool little way of like, you can kind of try to figure out and say, okay, like, look, if we wait one more round, maybe this will move a little bit, and we can flip a tile over and discover where that piece is or whatever. There's a little bit of that going on. So there's enough strategy here and interest that this game is so much fun and so fast to play for me, but has so much meat on the bone. And I love the theme, like this, what the enemy kind of the villain deck or the pushback deck happens, like you get like the sun will beat down on you, or the wind will blow, or the storm will pick up, and when my wife and I play, I like to be like, whoosh, or we like see the, you'll have to drink water. That's one of the things that's kind of your life. If you run out of water, you die. But when the sun beat down cards come on, we're always like, and we just pretend to drink water. And so we really kind of ham it up and get into it. I really love this one. That's my number 7, Forbidden Desert. Now, my number 6 is Escape the Curse of the Temple. Now, this is another dice game, which is crazy because I'm really not overly fond of dice games, but this one, unless they're very fast. So I always feel like the amount of luck in the game means the game's got to be very, very brief. Now, this one is brief. It's a timed game, and it's super stressful. It's only 10 minutes, and you put on a soundtrack to go with it. And the soundtrack is like, escape, and it plays this like very tense music. And essentially what you're doing in the game is you're moving around this temple, and you're just exploring tiles. It's basically like Raiders of the Lost Ark, the game. And you're going around, and you're exploring these tiles, and bringing these tiles out, and you're trying to find the exit. But along the way, you want to collect enough of these crystals so you've had a successful run, and then you can leave the temple with it, and then you'll win. However, over the course of the 10 minutes, you're just essentially rolling these 5 dice over and over and over and over and over again. And those are the dice that you're deciding, okay, I need to do my action that I want to do. I need 2 running guys, 2 of these symbols. And so you say, okay, I rolled 1, I'm going to set that one aside, and I'm going to keep rolling my other dice until I get another one. And you can kind of hold back your dice and not roll them so that you can, make sure you get what you want. However, you're not going to be able to roll as many dice. But the little bit of a twist here is that if you ever roll a black skull, it's stuck, and you can't re-roll that unless you roll a gold skull and activate that to re-roll all of your dice. But you can also, if you're on the tile with your teammate, is very team-oriented, you can have them, you can help them instead. I played this 4-player before, and it's kind of cool because you can split up and each go in a different direction, trying to unlock more and more tiles and working together. But the real rub of it is that roughly halfway through, and there's different soundtracks, so you can always be sure, it will gong, and that means you have to get back to the starting tile or you'll lose a die. Sometimes you might be like, I'm so far away, I don't care, I'm going to lose my die, and then you're just less effective, but a lot of times you feel like that's really necessary to go back. But what I love about this game, the tenseness, the excitement, the roll, quick. It's like so much frantic and fun. But what I really love is there's like all these little expansions, like these little $5 things of like you can go Board Game Geek and the store there, and it's like it's a tile where there's like a mummy or a ghost, and you gotta like that's an additional task you have to do to get out, as well as the crystals, and you have to like force the ghost back into its tomb or whatever. Or there's like the Tree of Life, you have to like rejuvenate the Tree of Life. But then there's big box expansions that have like characters with special powers, which I love. So now you have these special powers, but you also have like powers that you can use all game, and then some that you can only use once a game since they're super powerful. But those really change things up. It's so simple, but because you're so focused on going fast, it really makes the game very, very frantic and fun. And again, all those expansions like illusion tiles and poisonous tiles and curses that come out, and you can try to get rid of your curse by rolling dice, as well as the other stuff you're trying to do, or you'll just live with the fact that your curse is you got to keep your hand on your head, or you got to stand up or you can't talk, or whatever other thing that there is. So there's so many little things in this, and you can make these little thematic temples for yourself, which is what I did. It's not really, say, okay, I've got all these kind of snakes and poisonous ones, and that's going to be the theme of the temple. Let's try going through this one. But it's so fast to play. It's 10 minutes, 5 minutes to set up, very easy to teach, but very, very frantic and panicky and super, super fun. That is my number 6, Escape the Curse of the Temple. My number 5 is Chronicles of Crime. Now, this is a whole series of games. I think my favorite of which is Noir, and I'll go into that in a little bit, but the base game itself was completely knocked my socks off when I got it. Now, this is kind of an app-based game. You have to have the app to do it, but it absolutely still does feel like a tabletop game. You can't play it without the tabletop components. Now, this is a part of the mystery genre, which is a genre that I love. But leading up to this game, I remember thinking to myself I really wish there was there's like Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective, and there's a ton of these mystery games. But I'm always I want to be able to ask this person something, or I want to be able to do X, Y, Z. How do I make that happen? How do I get that to happen? In this game, it's so cool. There's different mysteries that you go through, and they're very adult mysteries. They can involve human trafficking, drugs, murder. There's all this stuff. But you essentially are trying to solve a crime, and you scan a person. You have different locations, and you can scan that into your tablet or whatever, and you'll go to that location, and then you'll have different people there, and you'll take their cards. And if you're like, I want to talk to this person, you scan them, and now you're talking to that person, and you can say, hey, I want to ask them about this other person. Well, you scan that other person, and you're asking them, and they'll tell you, oh, I don't know them, or oh yeah, I had a fight with them last year, or whatever. Or you're like, hey, I want to ask him about this gun or these drugs or these other things that are going on in the case, and you can ask them. Now, time is your one big resource. So you can't ask everything about everything to everybody, so you have to pick and choose what you ask, and of course you're going to follow deductive reasoning to do that. But it feels so thematic because it's not you're not okay, well, I read a little passage and I don't know how to make, I know what happened, but how do I find these things? But this you can. You're it's so realistic. It's I'm at your house, and I'm going to ask you about this person or this thing or this item, and you can see what they say, and that guides your investigation. It's so well done. It's so story driven. It's absolutely fantastic. Now, the noir version is my favorite because I love the old Gumshoe stuff, and I love film noir. I love Dashiell Hammett and Raymond Chandler. So I love that whole world and those films, the Maltese Falcon, all this stuff. And, so I love that. And then in this particular version of it, noir has 4 new actions. You can tail someone, so you can scan that person and be like, I'm going to follow this person. Or you can bribe somebody, so you're talking to a cop and you can say, bribe. How does that work? Or if somebody's giving you trouble, you can try to rough them up a little bit, and or you can break into places. And I feel that given those 4, enjoying the game and understanding the game, having those 4 new actions really opens it up. Now this game obviously comes with these sensibilities, and the noir version has the sensibilities of that time period, and some people don't quite like that, and that's okay. That's not for you. Otherwise, I would mention that maybe 2400 is a cyberpunk version of this game that you can play, and that's very, very similar. You have a similar set of actions that you can do. I think that's my second favorite probably, but you can download extra cases and things, and there's tons and tons of cases, and they're super fun. I think for non-gamers, very easy to get non-gamers in, because I mean, it's so self-explanatory. You can teach somebody to play in 5 minutes, and then it makes complete sense. Like, oh, let's ask this person about this, or let's go here and talk to them about that. And so I find that this was the best implementation, the best way of doing a crime game or a mystery type of game there's ever been up to this point. I thought it was revolutionary when it came out, and I absolutely love that. That's my number 5, Chronicles of Crime. My number 4 is Subterra 2. Now, I will say right at the beginning, when I found this in a local game shop, and I purchased it, and then I having learned a little more about it, I know that there's a Kickstarter associated with this that failed, and this is one of the pitfalls of Kickstarter. Not a huge fan of Kickstarter. That's a little tangent that I won't go on to, but I'm sorry that some people weren't able to find this, and hopefully that will be rectified. That being said, this game is absolutely incredible. It's right in my wheelhouse. Now, firstly, it's another game like Raiders of the Lost Ark. The theme is absolutely fantastic in this. You're going into this temple, and there's like traps that you can step on, or poison darts, or there's these ancient guardians in there that will fight you and try to kill you and stuff. And you're trying to get to the end and find this artifact, this relic. And the second you pick it up from the pedestal, the volcano will go off. And if you take too long, the volcano will go off. And you're trying to run out of the temple. And that tempo of like, is so exciting. It's exploring. You're like going through and revealing tiles until you've gotten all of them out, and then you find the exit or the relic. And once you grab that, you're trying to escape. And all of the temple tiles are double-sided. So when you flip them over, as the lava starts going and spreading through the temple, it's this lava thing. And man, so that theme is amazing, but also the components are absolutely spectacular. The art and stuff. Very, very high components, very lovely to look at, and it makes so much thematic sense. But what really makes this game sing, in addition, well, so first of all, let me back up actually. When you're laying out your path and you're bringing out tiles, you're doing it very smartly. That's part of the game, is that you're trying to set it up so that you have, like most exploration games, you're like trying to find something, you're trying to get out or whatever. But this, once you get the relic, you also have to come out. And so you're trying to smartly build this little kind of like a dungeon or whatever you want to call it, in a way that you can actually escape from it quite easily. But what really makes it sing is that you have a bunch of different characters to play with, and they all have special powers. And that's what I really love about, like I say, about my wheelhouse, is like, hey, I love this game, and then, hey, let's play with these different characters. And each time you're like, okay, I want to try this character now. And it completely changes the game. It changes the puzzle completely, and that experience is completely, although you don't have to learn a whole new game. And I absolutely love that. The thematics of like going through and like, I can't stand here, otherwise that dart could hit me if it goes off and stuff. And that's like cuts down your bandwidth because you understand the game. But it's a very, very, very super fun. And it's not a really long game either. It's kind of like an hour-ish, maybe, and if you die pretty quick, you just play again. But yeah, this is such a great game, and I hope that more people get a chance to play it. There's a couple of expansions. Again, I think they were tied to that Kickstarter, but I was my friend Jesse managed to track them down, and so I got to play them, and they add so much to the game, and they're so super fun. And this is now there's a Subterra 1, which it's fine, but I played it after I played the second one, and I was like, yeah, I don't need that. Like Subterra 2 is just knocked my socks off, and I think it's a re-implementation kind of, but it's also its own game and has a lot more going on in it that I quite enjoy. And that's my number 4, Subterra 2. My number 3 is kind of 2 games because they're 2 versions of the same game, and that's Ghost Stories or Last Bastion. Now, this one, Last Bastion, is a re-implementation of Ghost Stories, but it's different. It's a little bit different. It's the same exact game, but it has like, you know, the enemies you'll fight and the heroes you'll use are a little bit different. So I could take either one. Although Ghost Stories, I prefer at this point, having played so much of it, I really prefer playing it with the White Moon expansion. So let's talk a little bit about it. One of them, I do love both themes, by the way, but the Ghost Stories version, you are Taoist monks fighting off hordes of enemies. They're both sort of tower defense. And this game, I love because it reminds me of those, you know, like hopping vampire movies, all these Shaw Brothers movies, all these mystical kind of movies. I love that theme, and that's not really, you never really see that in gaming. However, I really love the Last Bastion one too, because, you know, each of the colors of enemies, and I'll get into that a little bit, has a different, you know, like orcs or undead or whatever, and they kind of operate in a different way, and I think that's really smart the way they did that as well. But essentially, you're going to be facing waves and waves of enemies that are going to come out, each an enemy a round, maybe more, and then eventually you're going to get to the boss, and 1 to 3 bosses depending on your level of difficulty, and you're going to have to defeat that boss, and then you can win the game. But you have to survive that long, and essentially over the game you can move, and you can either fight depending on where you are. It's a grid of 9, and there's enemies will come to each of the 4 sides of the square, and there's 9 squares, and you're going to move around, and you can move and then choose to fight one of the monsters that's next to you, or you can fight and then move, or instead of fighting, you can call upon the village tile that you're on. So each of the 9 tiles will have a different power. Like you can spend one of your life points to kill an enemy automatically, or you could, you know, roll these dice to get some tokens that will help you when you fight. And so it's really a push-pull. And again, this is like one of those ones where like it has, everybody's got different powers, and so you get to play, you know, this changes the game completely, as I mentioned throughout this list, being able to completely change the game by picking different heroes with different powers. Now the Last Bastion version of it has some really wonderful miniatures and things with it as well, but both of the games are stunning art, stunning components, really, really, really well done. But essentially, like, you're just going around and just fighting these enemies until the boss comes out. And the boss comes out, they have a completely different power each time, depending on which version of the boss you're going to fight. And I really love that because you don't know what's going to happen. Then when they come out, you're like, oh my god, this is the challenge of this one. And if you play with multiples, sometimes you haven't killed the first one when the second one comes out. Super, super fun. And this is a game where there is a lot of dice rolling in it, but I think when I first played it, I thought like, I wish I loved this game because it's just so difficult and seems so random until you really kind of learn. And this is the thing about modern gamers. You play a game and then, you know, most people play a game once or twice and they move on to something else. And this is one where I played like a few times and it was like so hard and I was having trouble, and then I realized kind of the strategy of playing it, and then I just kept playing it. And where people will play the game and be like, I can't beat the one villain. And I'm like, yeah, I can play like and beat 3 of the bosses, not easily, but I mean like routinely. So it really benefits, it's a game that benefits from playing it a lot. And the thing is, this is easily to play. I played tons 2-player. I played a lot of this solo. This is one where you, like, especially Last Bastion, I play that one more now because the characters are different powers and I'm not used to that. You know, I've got, it's more exciting to try something new, and so I could set it up and play it within, easily set up, play, breakdown in an hour. And so that's very nice to bring it to the table, play a couple of games, and then be done and have a really robust experience. And so there's so many choices as to what you do and how you do move. And then the board is always, you know, each game is going to be laid out differently, which changes the puzzle. So the puzzle's kind of constantly moving around, and all the ghosts will have, the enemies or the ghosts will have, when you're fighting them, they have come into play effects, or they have continuing effects where each time it comes to them, they activate a different power, or when you kill them, they have either rewards or punishments. And so it's always this puzzle of who do you fight, when do you fight them, you know, and what do you do? And there's, they're both fantastic games, and they were my number one, you know, I could easily be my number ones in other years, but this is Ghost Stories with the White Moon specifically is my favorite, or Last Bastion, another, like I said, it's sister game. That's my number 3. My number 2 is a bit of a cheat, and that's the Pandemic family of games. Now, it's a little bit of a weird thing because I'll say what my favorites are. My favorite is Pandemic Legacy Season 1 was probably the greatest gaming experience I've ever had. I played through that a couple of times. That's a legacy game that you'll alter as you go, and you'll only play a set number of games. So I can't really say that because it's not a continuing game, but for a game you can play all the time and always, and I played probably 50 or 60 or 70 games of this, which is Iberia. That's my other favorite one. But essentially, thematically, there's 5 different diseases that are ravaging the globe, or let's just say the globe, and then you're kind of on your turn. It's such an elegant game. You're spending your time deciding when to treat, which is a tactical decision, treating the cubes and removing them from the game before they get to be too many, or they have bigger outbreaks or spread faster, or whether you're going to go towards the end game condition, which is to cure each of the 5 diseases. And then you're going to be trading cards with other players and managing your hand and deciding when to use your card to travel around, build research stations to allow you to travel around and also to cure the diseases, or when you're going to use those cards to actually cure the disease. So it's a very tight, interesting, fantastic game. Lasts about an hour, and it's what really got me into modern board gaming. I played Magic, I played Axis and Allies, things like that, but this game blew me away when I first played it. It was such an elegant, well-designed game. Provides an interesting challenge. It's constantly revolving puzzle that changes each turn and each game that you play. But it's so elegant, and they're just like tons of characters in the base box, but many more that comes out with each of their expansions, which are amazing on their own. And then each time you play with a different kind of character, I'll try this character this time. Completely turns the game on its head and completely changes that way that puzzle works. Like I said, the legacy version of it is the best because it's just such an amazing story, and being able to alter your game in ways that are different than everybody else's is really fantastic. But Iberia also, there's some challenges in there where each of the diseases are historical diseases, and they act differently according to what color they are, which is as an interesting new challenge. And there's some other parts, but that make that game interesting. Like you have to lay railroad and things to try to move around the board better. But those are my 2 favorite versions. This is a very famous board game, of course. Very easy to approachable, fast to learn, quick to play. Yeah, this is it's amazing that this isn't my number 1 because I often, it's like the game I always compare everything else to. And again, it got me into the hobby, and it kept me into the hobby, and I still play it today and absolutely love it. And that's the Pandemic series of games. My number 1 is Lord of the Rings, the card game. This is a living card game by Fantasy Flight Games, and this is has to be my number 1 because I played 2,500 games of it. I like to keep a log, and I've hit, I think, just below 2,500 games now. Now, this is a living card game that is now done, and what does that mean? It's a game that basically once a month a new pack would come out, which has new player cards and new scenario to go against, which is super fantastic. Now, this is based on the Lord of the Rings books or movies, and it's a deck building game. You're going to construct a deck before you play, and then you're going to take that deck and a set of heroes against that scenario or that quest. And the deck is going to be comprised of up to 4 different types of cards, these different aspects that are kind of have different strengths and weaknesses about different parts of the game. And each of the heroes that you pick are going to be able to, pay for those different cards. So the colors of the characters that you pick are going to be important, but also the character itself, the hero itself, is going to have a different special ability. And the lineup of the 3 that you pick are going to interact differently together and along with that deck. And so you can try each of those different colors, or you can try those different archetypes within those colors, and that really changes the game up. So there's a lot of different ways that you can go about playing this game. Now, Marvel Champions is a lot less complicated, which makes it more approachable, easier to play for some, but it also sacrifices some of the richness and choice that you can get from a more complicated game, which is Lord of the Rings, the card game. Now, as I mentioned before with Marvel Champions, the really thing that makes this game shine is that there's 2 different economies. You're trying to quest properly, and make headway on the quest, in the scenario, but you're also trying to fight, and you're trying to, all of your characters, you're deciding whether you're going to use your characters to defend, to quest, or to fight. And so it's a painful choice. Like, I'd love to kill this enemy, but I think I'll just have to defend it for 1 more round because I need to make progress on this quest or whatever. And so there's a lot of richness there in terms of like how you're, the strategy of the game. So this is a game that there's, like 100 scenarios or something, and then there's another, equal amount of things that can make those scenarios into nightmare scenarios. So there's like 200 different ways you can play the game, and there's campaigns and things that will remember, things. There's quests that go through and follow the actual the book, the events of the books, and you can play through in a campaign style, and it's so rewarding and so exciting to go through that way. Or you can play just one-off. I just sit there and play a scenario a dozen times. When I was playing through them all originally, I'd play for like 10 or 20 games, and then I'd say, okay, I'm good with that scenario. Now let's play the next one. And you can play as new heroes come out, and all these new heroes would come out, and you have so many that there's so many combinations to play, make different decks out of, or to run against different scenarios. So it's endless possibilities. It's a little daunting for some, and a lot of it's out of print now, but they're sort of reprinting some of it in a more consumer-friendly fashion. But this game is definitely not for everyone, but it is definitely for me because there's so much. It's just a lifestyle game, and I spent years just kind of like, I just stopped playing most board games, and I just concentrated on playing this for a few years, and it was a very enjoyable endeavor. But that's my number one, Lord of the Rings, the card game, my favorite cooperative game. So that's my top 10 cooperative games. I hope that you found something on there that you'd like to try. Please comment below and tell me what I missed, what I'm wrong about, what you would have included. But for now, I gotta roll.